Over the years, I have lectured many times on the subject of Malcolm X and his relationship to the black radical ministry throughout the world. I have exhausted any fight I have with anyone over the subject because I've had enough time to think it out well and to reconsider anything I said initially. In other words, I've had time to go over my mental notes on the subject enough to be settled in my mind. Malcolm X's relationship to the radical ministry of the African world. I am dealing with the antecedents of Malcolm X, and to deal with the antecedents of Malcolm X, you've got to deal with the antecedents of radicalism in the African world. You have to understand that we are a radical revolutionary people, and that if we were not a radical revolutionary people, we would not still be in existence. At another place, I have said, Malcolm X, who had three distinct identifications, Malcolm Little, Malcolm X, and Malcolm El-Haj Shabazz, lived three distinct lives, and yet all of these lives stemmed from one life. I've also said that no nation could have made Malcolm quite the way he was, and no nation could have destroyed him with the same ruthless uniqueness. That he is a product of American oppression, and that no nation oppressed quite the same way the United States oppressed, and no nation destroys its oppressed quite the same way. That we're dealing with a unique phenomenon in history, and yet when we address ourselves as Malcolm X, relationship to radicalism and to radical social thought and radical action among African people, we are dealing with a personality that we have met many times on the roads of our history. So therefore, there is nothing especially new about the spirit of Malcolm X. There's nothing especially new about the action of Malcolm X. He is unique for his time, and the other radicals were unique for their time. I am not saying that he is a duplication. I'm saying he was a continuation of radical thinking and radical history, radical action that is deep in our history as a people. And one of the reasons we do not know this is because too many times our minds get locked behind what is called the 500-year room by Professor Van Sertima. And I say our mind gets locked in front of a slavery curtain, and we act as though slavery was the only thing of consequence that had happened to us. Slavery, in the measurement of time, because we are the oldest people functioning on this earth, we were functioning 4 million years ago. And when we look at the societies we have produced, 500 years out of that time is 1/2 of the wink of an eye. All right. So you're talking about, you hung up with slavery. You haven't even studied what you did 1,000 years before slavery. And what did you do 1,000 years before that? And 1,000 years before that? I'm saying that we must take a holistic and a global view of black radicalism and show that a Malcolm X fits into that category historically. And he is a continuation of radical activity among African people that started with the beginning of organized societies in the Nile Valley and in southeastern Africa. He is a continuation of a people who were on the stage of the world for thousands of years with no script and had to act out and make real a play of history with no precedent. They had to do this because there was nothing for them to follow. There was no previous people. Nobody left any books behind. There wasn't nobody to leave these books behind. They had to start from scratch and build human society. They had to start from scratch and build spirituality. And that all of our action of survival has been radical activity, leading ultimately to the radical class of the Malcolm X. I am saying that our social thinking in the ancient world, and we look down the spectrum of our history and take it in full view, we must consider the fact that we built enduring society that lasted for thousands of years, not only without a jail system, but without a word in our language that meant jail. That if we could do this through the family structure and the community structure, it means that we had a radical way of looking at the world, original and an imaginative way of looking at the world that we still need and that the world still needs. And I'm saying that transforming the river valleys of Africa into cities and civilizations was a radical activity in the world, because all of this existed before the first European wore a shoe or lived in a house that had a window. All right. And I'm saying that with the coming of foreigners, a new kind of radical had to come into being. And the main reasons why we have not understood a Malcolm X in relationship to the uniqueness of oppression in the United States and the uniqueness of destruction of oppressors in the oppressed in the United States, that we have not understood the design of the nation itself. We have not understood that while we had a humanity that spoke to all human beings, the foreigner had a humanity that was parochial, that spoke to his intention of holding power. And that to tell a lie was an easy thing for him to do, because in matters pertaining to the recognition of other people's humanity, he didn't mean it in the first place. He didn't mean arguments about democracy in the first place. He didn't mean about Christianity in the first place. Because his method of holding power is both anti-democratic and anti-Christian. All right. And the one disaster that will hit his life if he dared to practice Christianity or democracy 24 hours, he's finished. So the one thing you can depend on the Europeans never to believe and never to practice is democracy and Christianity. Because if he will dismantle his entire society by virtue of this kind of commitment. So from the beginning, you are dealing with a liar who the lie is part of his tradition and part of his history. All right.